Sometimes life goes a little off course. That's why you need a podcast host that can go a little off topic. This is the podcast that will give you straight talk about everything life throws at you. Welcome to another episode of Off Topic with Tom Powell. And here he is. This is Tom Powell.
All right, dude. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I finished moving a couple days ago. Got a great new place. I moved out of the city into Marin County. I'm back up in the woods.
Okay.
Found an apartment with a fireplace. It's wonderful.
Nice.
It's quiet. It gets dark at night. It's fantastic.
Had enough of the city living?
I go in shifts, you know. Like I'll live in the city for 5 or 10 years and then I'll move up here for 3 or 4 and then go back.
Interesting. I didn't know that you bounced around like that. But hey, I mean, if you have the flexibility to do it, by all means, right?
Yeah.
This would drive you nuts, this suburban living, man. Barbecues and ball games, you know what I mean?
Sometimes I miss that kind of stuff, you know?
First things first, man. We're both, for everybody that's listening and everybody that's watching, both on Hawk's channel and on my, we're doing this so that we can both use the audio and visual. Both Hawk and I are going to be doing this on our platforms. It's not something that we both normally do. We each do our own thing, but we're doing this together. And I have some questions for Hawk before we get into the insanity of the bullshit that we're going to talk about. So, first thing I wanted to know about is well, not know about, but just kind of like touch on with you is you took, and I believe still do take, a lot of inspiration from your mom for your life, for your career, for your direction. And obviously I didn't have a mother that I could draw a lot of inspiration from or follow in her footsteps or anything like that. But your mom is why you're a lawyer, right?
Yes and no. I mean, she went to law school at night when my brother and I were in high school. She was already a registered nurse by that point, but decided she wanted to become an attorney. And, when I graduated from high school in 1986, and then I spent about 7 years getting a philosophy degree.
Seven-ish years?
It's 7-ish, give or take. But it's like I'm a drummer and I was always playing in bands. And, the early 90s, I was going to Ohio State in Columbus. Like 93, 94, Columbus was supposed to be the next Seattle. And so I was fortunate to be in some really cool bands at the time in Columbus. And I figured, I'd have a record contract. And by the time I graduated, I didn't have a record contract. Hang on. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just lost my video. Hang on one second here. Having some difficulties.
No problem. Just for the record, I can still see and hear you. But
Okay.
You are lagging. You are lagging now ever since you said you lost your video.
And I lost. Wait. Okay. Sorry. Guys, hey. My dogs are going nuts. Hang on one moment.
No problem, man. No problem.
Come here. Right now.
I'm going to use this opportunity to take another hit off the old doobage. Because why the fuck not?
So, all right. So where I lived in the last building, I brought them in here and shut the door with me. Where I lived in my last building, we were several floors up from street level in a high-rise building. And so they could look out down below, but they would never really bark at anybody. Well, here I'm on a second story and there's a walkway and a staircase right out in front of my apartment. So the neighbors come and walk right by my windows and they go nuts when that happens. So, so I thought that I was going to be in a band with a record deal by the time I graduated. That didn't happen. And then I realized that I had just graduated from college with a philosophy degree and, which qualified me to do absolutely nothing. And, um, literally one of my buddies was like, I mean, he was like, dude, your mom went to law school. She's doing great. You should go to law school. You'd be good at it. And I was like, okay. And that was the beginning and the end of the whole thought process.
And
Less than,
you're a defense lawyer, you're a defense lawyer, correct?
well, so I've done a lot of things. I started out when I was still in Ohio doing criminal defense and a little bit of everything. And then after 3 years, I moved out here to San Francisco. And then I did civil litigation, mainly like personal injury cases.
Okay.
Then I did family law for many years. And then about 13, 14 years ago, I went back to personal injury stuff and trial work.
Gotcha. Now, honestly, I've somewhat come to know you over the last couple of years being on TikTok. We text every now and again back and forth.
Yes.
But had I known that you went to Ohio State, this friendship would have never blossomed into anything because fuck Ohio State and everything they stand for.
Look,
Sorry,
man, it's like if you grow up in Ohio, especially in or around central Ohio, I mean, Ohio State is just a huge part of your existence, even if you never go there.
Oh, in this area, so obviously Chicago has a handful of schools in it, and then Illinois has a handful of schools in it. But if you're in the Chicagoland area and you're not a Notre Dame fan, you're a fucking pariah.
Yeah.
And I fucking hate Notre Dame. Ohio State and Notre Dame are the two teams I hate the fucking most, being from the Midwest. Notre Dame is like the most overrated fucking team in the history of fucking anything ever. And everybody around here has a fucking leprechaun on them.
Yeah. I mean, people get that thing tattooed on them.
Oh, all the time. You get down on the south side at the St. Patrick's Day parade, you're going to see the tattoo ratio of drunken Irish men is fucking insane on the south side. Everybody's decked out in green. Everybody's a fucking leprechaun. Yeah,
I'll bet, man.
But yeah, Ohio State. Yeah, I didn't realize you went to Ohio State, so I'm just scratching my San Francisco travel plans off my calendar now. Oh, now the music. We're going to talk politics, obviously, but the music, real quick. Like you said, you were a drummer, and you've talked a lot about the recording that you did early on and stuff like that. Was it all like the metal that you listened to? Listen, I know you don't dig on the hippie culture. Yeah, I know you don't have nothing against it, but it's not your vibe. But
it's not my vibe.
I know that you're a metalhead. So is that what you played?
Weirdly, I was in a metal cover band right after I moved to San Francisco, which is a whole other story that I'll come back to. But I've never been in a metal band that like did original music. The bands that I was in that did original stuff was like grunge and sort of like rock pop sort of music. Okay. But I've never been in a metal band. The one metal band that I was in was a cover band. It was like 2003, 2004. I had just moved to San Francisco at the beginning of 2002, and my brother and I and some of his motorcycle buddies started a cover band, play metal songs, and then one of them had the idea that we should all like dress up in outfits when we played live. And we had this one guy in the band who was just like full of crazy ideas and could promote anything. Like he would be like, I'm going to get us this gig. and there was zero chance, and he would land that gig for us. And so he got us a gig 2 years in a row playing on the main stage at the Folsom Street Fair here in San Francisco, which is a leather kink BDSM street fair that
Nice.
draws like 400,000 people a year. And you see all kinds of things going on in the street when you're at the Folsom Street Fair. And it's got a very, very heavy LGBTQ slant to it. You know, a lot of leather daddies and things like that. And so the first time we played at the Folsom Street Fair, I didn't know what it was. And, you know, I'd never been to before. I didn't know what it was. And the outfit that I wore this band when we played live was a regulation Cub Scout uniform. And so I showed up to the Folsom Street Fair dressed like a Cub Scout. I got a lot of attention that day.
Damn.
None of it from women.
I thought you were going in a different direction. I thought you were going to tell us that you guys came out like the average Joe's dodgeball team when they got the wrong uniforms, and they all had like horse bits in their mouth and shit.
Yeah,
dog collars. Wow. Wow. Okay, so that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. We're gonna skip over that.
Okay.
We're oh man, you get into any of the Chicago scene? I know you did some recording in Chicago. You get into any Chicago music? You like Naked Ray Gun? You like Poi Dog? Well, Poi Dog Pondering's probably not your scene.
I've seen those guys a couple times actually out here in San Francisco. I've had friends who really like that band, so I've tagged along with them, and I've seen them a couple times.
Okay, Poi Dog or Naked Ray Gun?
Poi Dog. I enjoyed their shows. They were pretty good.
You listen to Naked Ray Gun?
No.
All right, so give them a shot. It's a little bit more punkish.
That I like.
They've been in the Chicago scene for like 30 years. And the gentleman who owns the local music shop out here by us and who plays in two different bands, Death in Memphis and Space Age Zeros, he's the guy that I got this guitar from.
Yeah.
He regularly sits in with Naked Ray Gun. So they're pretty big in the Chicagoland area. If you have a chance, check them out. I love them. You'll see the shirt that I wear from time to time. It's a pretty interesting band. I go all the way back to the album. Like there's an album called Understand. When you see the cover of the album Understand, you'll kind of get a vibe for what Naked Ray Gun is all about.
All right.
But listen, I mean, the reason why we're gonna spend most of our time talking tonight is the fucking the insanity of you. I don't know if you coined it. I don't know if you stole the phrase, but it is my new favorite nickname for this fucking son of a bitch, and that's Pervert Hoover. This fucking lunatic, this goddamn fascist piece of shit scumbag bucket of liquefying dog shit, and his cult following.
I got that. I heard that from Mrs. Misanthrope on the app.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
She's the first person I heard that from. I give her full credit for that.
Good. So every time I use it, I'll give her credit with a little tip of the hat to you. So
there you go. But yeah, it's perfect.
It is. It's spot on. I don't know if you saw, but I did a video today. There's a gentleman, I think he's running for a state office. He's a Republican. I think he's running in New Jersey. And he put on X, or what was used to be called Twitter today, that it's his pinned tweet. Donald Trump could rape my mother in front of me and I would still vote for him.
I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
And so when I started my video, I said, you guys want to know why we say that you're in a cult? It is shit like this, because I don't believe that's hyperbole. I believe this motherfucker means that.
They do. He does.
And how do we get across to the Genocide Joe side of the left wing that this is how fucking serious this is? You have a large audience. I have a large audience. How the fuck do we get across to this crowd that we get it? You don't like them. We don't want them in there either. But look at this. This is what we're up against. You don't like a policy he has. This guy is literally saying he can do anything he wants to my mother, and I would still race to the polls to vote for him.
It's a really difficult, challenging thing, um, because, uh, you know, God, it's 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 such a complicated thing. I mean, Joe Biden's been in government for 50 years,
Yes.
and I think one thing that I think a lot of people forget is that when he was in the Senate, like, foreign relations was his thing. I
Yes.
mean, that was his thing. And I think that it has always been his perspective, that's like, just like the United States has always had kind of a special international relationship with the UK, with Great Britain. uh, I think Joe Biden has always viewed the United States having that kind of a relationship with Israel, um, which I don't think has been as problematic for the United States before the last 7 or 8 months. And even though their history is their history, and I've read a significant amount about the history of the governments in Israel and how the governments in Israel tend to treat their Palestinian civilians, citizens. They've been treated poorly historically, put it that way. But the last 6.5 months has taken that to a whole new level. And, prior to this most recent, I don't even know the word to use, because it's not a war. Wars have two sides. Um, Prior to the last 6 months, there was never TikTok. There was never social media. There were never people reporting from the ground inside a place like the Gaza Strip and showing in real time what was happening and what was being done. And that, obviously, I think, is a whole new element to this whole thing. And plus, I duetted a video from a teacher, a school teacher, the other day. She's taught middle school, she's taught high school, and she was talking about some of the college protesters, and she's like, these kids' lives have been under siege their entire lives. I mean, they've grown up doing school shooter drills at school, and they've been protesting their entire lives, doing walkouts over school shootings and shit like that. She's like, you guys don't understand this generation. You
Right. No,
just don't.
this is a whole different group of people. I have one that's right smack dab in the middle. She's 19. She'll be 20 in September. She's wrapping up freshman year at UIC. And
Yeah.
when you look at her Instagram feed, it is all about the Middle East. It is all about the college protests. Real quickly, I think what you meant to say just a moment ago is that prior to this last excursion that has developed over the last 7 to 8 months, prior excursions didn't have social media. Not that there
Yeah.
wasn't social media before 7 months ago, because some dumb
Right.
fucker take that soundbite and go, "Look at the dumbass doesn't know he thinks social
Oh,
media is 8 months old."
they're gonna do that anyway.
Yeah,
They're gonna chop this up every which way they can possibly think of.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll obviously have the real audio and video on our thing to dispute any of the edited films. But the thing, okay, so
but I guess, to come back to your question, it's like, I heard somebody say something the other day. They were talking about Dearborn, Michigan, which has one of the largest Muslim populations anywhere in the United States. And, there are a lot of people within that community who are like, well, I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump because he wants to ban all Muslims. And I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden because of his policies relative to Israel and the Gaza Strip. And, and somebody was like, are you going to go into Dearborn, Michigan and tell somebody who lost 20 family members in the Gaza Strip that they need to vote for Joe Biden?
no.
Obviously not. Obviously not. And I think with some of these younger folks who are kind of adopting this Genocide Joe kind of perspective on things. I don't know. I don't know how to tell them or talk to them about the importance of voting for Joe Biden without feeling like I'm minimizing what's important to them, while at the same time recognizing the vast importance to our nation that Joe Biden get reelected.
Yeah, it is so incredibly maddening to know that you're talking to somebody that makes a valid point, that says, hey, listen, this is shit that's got to stop. Yes, people have asked me a bunch of times what my opinion on the whole Israeli Palestinian thing is. Yeah, are you
Yeah.
on the Israeli side? Are you on the Palestinian side? And I listened to a mutual of mine, AK Crucial,
Yeah.
who I think said it best when they said, for the people, because the people of Israel and the people of Palestine don't deserve what Netanyahu and Hamas is doing to them. Netanyahu and Hamas are the fucking problems. The people are the ones that are suffering. And if you go talk to the fucking people, they just want to be left alone and be able to live their fucking lives, and they can't do it. Israel treats Palestine, Netanyahu treats Palestinians like cattle, and whenever he feels like it, he shuts the water off. He lobs missiles in. He shuts off their supply route, and Hamas, who has taken control of the Palestinian territory, terrorizes Israel, and the two of them are the issue. Having said that, what has happened there has filtered its way into the younger generation. We're seeing this Genocide Joe thing, and you want to scream while trying to be respectful of their position. You want to scream, what the fuck do you think that is going to happen if Donald Trump gets in? And they're like, well, I'm not voting for Donald Trump. It doesn't matter if you're not voting for Donald Trump. You're not voting for the party that you would normally vote for, which is helping the opposite party, especially when we're talking about razor thin margins. Less than 12,000 votes separated the two in Georgia, for fuck's sake.
I mean, here's the thing, and I get cranky with people on the left about this all the time, and they get mad at me when I point this out. Everybody loves to say that Joe Biden won the last election by more than 7 million votes. Well, first of all, 5 million of those votes came from California and 2 million of them came from New York. So who gives a shit? You can take those off the board. And it came down to about 45,000 votes over 3 swing states when there were more than 150 million votes cast. About 155 million votes cast, and the election was decided by less than 50,000 votes over 3 states. That's how thin the margin is. And, it's like, fortunately, Donald Trump has this problem in spades as well. Nikki Haley dropped out of the primaries 2 months ago. She's still getting 20% of the vote in the primaries that are still happening. So there's a huge Trump protest vote within the Republican Party. And there's a big Biden protest vote within the Democratic Party or within the left. It's like,
well, because in Pennsylvania, a grassroots protest uprising occurred in the primary, and Joe Biden had 60,000 people in a closed primary write in as a protest vote. So the question becomes, how many people on the left that are protest voting in the primary actually protest vote in the general, and how many of those people on the right who are still citing Nikki Haley and say to interviewers, I'm never going to vote for Trump, how many of them actually do follow through with that and not vote for Trump? Because while Trump is losing support within the Republican Party, this is the ideal time for Biden to be solidifying his support. But now they're both losing support, and it's like, who loses the most support in this razor thin race?
Well, which is why Biden and his campaign are going after Nikki Haley voters to make up for the younger voters on the left that they're losing.
Yeah. And
that's what they're trying to do.
And they're going to have to try and do something, obviously, to make this up. They're also going to have to try and convince some of these younger voters to come back into the fold. But, circling back around to the frustration, and it's not our job, obviously, but we do have platforms. We've developed some level of following, and it's frustrating when you're trying to explain to people, listen, we agree with you. We are in agreement with you. But where we disagree is we cannot take the risk of allowing Donald Trump to get back in. If you vote for Joe Biden one more time, you literally never have to vote for him again. Grandpa Ranty goes bye-bye. And by the time the next presidential election rolls around, there are going to be a bunch of boomers that are going to go bye-bye. You're not going to see the Nancy Pelosi's. You're probably not going to see Chuck Schumer. You're not going to see Mitch McConnell anymore. We're probably going to get rid of what's her name, Murkowski and Collins and all of those people on the left and the right, because they're getting fucking old, man. We just got to tolerate it one more time. And then you guys take over the reins of control, really.
Yes. However, on the flip side, you know, that I get and I understand why that sounds hollow to someone who says to me, but Netanyahu and the Israeli military have killed 15,000 Palestinian children using weapons that they got from us and from Joe Biden.
And my response to a member of the younger generation that would say that to me would be as follows. I understand that. I agree. That's horrible. Having said that, you can't find a fucking presidential candidate right now that wouldn't wholeheartedly support Israel, because they all fucking do ever since we fucking created the country.
Yeah. Well,
and they all will for another God knows how fucking long, because it's the only fucking ally in the region, and they're who are Israel's enemies, the people that we've been at war with for how fucking long.
Yeah, I mean, I've just started responding to people by saying Bibi Netanyahu wants Donald Trump to be reelected, and so does Vladimir Putin.
Yep.
So,
and that's a fact. That's the government of Israel is hard right wing.
Yeah, the current coalition very much so. And you know, God love them, they express that in no uncertain terms out loud every single day.
Yes.
And some of the shit that the people within the government say about Palestinians in this war are absolutely horrifying. And they're not hiding it at all anymore. But, you know, Bibi Netanyahu and his governing coalition, they want Donald Trump back in the White House. And as does Vladimir Putin and Viktor Orban.
Yes, and that brings us back to, you know, they're saying the quiet part out loud. They're not hiding it. That is now what we're facing in this country as well. I duetted a gentleman today. It was an older gentleman who said, I believe that we should pass a law in Congress that Democrats can't vote, and when they vote for the bill in Congress, only Republicans should be allowed to vote for it because Democrats picked the wrong people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky thing. You know, I mean, and I've made this point many times. It's like people on the right, you know, MAGA, whatever we want to call them now, have really gravitated towards Russia and Vladimir Putin over the last few years because they view Russia, like on paper, as what they want the United States to be. It's a white Christian ethno-state with zero immigration, almost no black or brown people, and it's basically illegal to be a member of the LGBTQ community.
Mm-hmm. And it's run
when
by
it's like when you write that out, there are so many people on the right that are like, yeah, I want that, especially when you add in a strong man as a leader who punishes the people within the country who you don't like. And it's like, I always point out to them, I'm like, well, you know, Russia doesn't have a Bill of Rights or a Second Amendment, and you're not allowed to own guns there. So they always forget that part.
Yes, always. And we have the younger people they just don't grasp, in my opinion, what you and I have seen in our lifetime. We have watched the Republican Party go from the Reagan Republicans, which were, you know, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Yeah, fuck you. We'll press the button. We'll go to nuclear war with you. We'll be the last motherfucker standing. We'll wipe you off the face of the earth. All the way to I'd rather be a Russian than a Democrat on their T-shirt at the fucking rallies. And this is, listen. Do I think many of these Republican elected officials are officially acting under direct orders from Putin? No, I don't. Do I think that Russia has figured out a way to infiltrate its thought process into the United States politics through the NRA and the GOP? It, all evidence points to fucking yes. You got Marjorie Taylor Greene doing Putin's bidding out there. You got Donald Trump, who cannot say a bad word about Putin, who stands on a stage with him and says, I believe him over our own intelligence agencies. You got multiple members of the GOP going to Russia on the 4th of July to have fucking lunch. Hell, you got Jill Stein over there hanging out with fucking oligarchs. You got Donald Trump's own kid saying this is where we get our money from. We get our money from the Russian oligarchs. I mean, they're the ones with all the billions of dollars. And then you point out all of these connections, and they go, "Oh, you guys are fucking insane. You got TDS." Trump lives in your head rent free.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about these protesters and the folks on the far left and younger people. I mean, you and I are close in age. I was a teenager in the '80s, and in the '90s, I was in my 20s. And I've often made the point that, at least for people who look like me, those 2 decades were kind of the last time that life in this country was just fucking easy. And
oh, hell yeah.
It was easy. Everything was easy.
Key point there, like you said, for people that look like us.
Exactly. And, when I think about kids that are 22, 23 years old today, it's like they started their lives with 9/11, with George W. Bush, the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war, a slight glimmer of hope when they're in elementary and middle school with Barack Obama, but then they also saw how incredibly racist many people in this country are during that presidency. And then by the time they're hitting high school, it's like, then we elected Donald Trump, a game show host, and we saw what his 4 years in office were. And then how does America respond to that? We elect somebody who's 78 years old, who during his first 2 years got more legislation passed than any president in the last 70 or 80 years to help the bottom 90% of the people. But then October 7th happened, and these kids have grown up with school shootings, school shooter drills. I can't fathom that, dude.
They had a financial collapse in there. We had the worst recession since the Great Depression.
But I've tried to put myself in a position of, like, you're going to school and teachers and the administration are basically telling little kids, because the people in power won't do anything to stop the people who are going to come in here and shoot you from getting guns, our legislature, our federal government aren't going to do anything to prevent those people from getting guns. So now we have to do this, and doing school shooter drills with kids that are 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. School shootings are so much of a thing that all schools across the country have this, because our generation and the generation above won't do anything to stop it.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we're just slightly different in years. You're just a few years older than I am. We did, the main thing for us was fire drills and tornado drills. That growing up in Ohio, growing up in Chicago. So my son, 12 years old, 6th grade right now, he knows a school shooter drill every bit as well as he does a fire or a tornado drill. And I remember in high school, so you graduate, the year you graduated, I was 14. When I got to my freshman year of high school, I remember hanging out on the back steps of the high school with the doors propped wide open so we could have a cigarette.
Yeah, we had a smoking area in my school.
Yes, anybody could have walked. Anybody could have walked into any number of doors at my high school at any point in time. Hell, they propped the fucking doors open to let fresh air in.
Yeah, and I mean, and that just brings me back to, if that's how I had grown up,
you'd be jaded too.
well, it's not just jaded. It's like it's 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 having it be demonstrated to you that to the people in power, the lives of young people don't matter. We're willing to sacrifice the lives of young people to protect our right to own guns.
Yep.
And let alone things like education funding and stuff like that. But it's like, because then I just end up at a place like, well, if I was in that generation and I cared deeply about this issue, about what's going on, and I do care deeply about it, but you know, if I was a member of that generation, would I listen to somebody like me, 55 years old?
Well, I mean, you could look back at your own age when you were 17. What did you think of 55? I remember when my uncle turned 50 and I was in my late teens. I thought he was fucking ancient. Like, that's the end of your life. You might as well fucking retire.
Well, dude, first of all, it's like I never in a million years dreamed that I'd ever live to be 40, let alone 55. I figured I'd have been gone a long time ago, man. But no, I would have just been like, you mean, okay, whatever, dude.
It is,
You know,
man,
because it's like, I mean, because I believe that to a lot of these young protesters, and they're not wrong, and a lot of the people that are, I mean, I think there are a lot of people on TikTok on the far left that are not of that generation who are just being performative.
Okay.
You know, they just found one more thing that they can latch onto for, you know, to jack up their own clout ratio or whatever. It's just the latest trend that they're hopping onto. But I think a lot of young people, rightly so, this is life and death to them. And not just life and death, it's murder. It's the wholesale slaughter of unarmed civilians who are being held in an area surrounded by walls that they are not permitted to leave while they're being slaughtered with weapons and support that they got from the United States and from Joe Biden. That's, I think when you look at it from that perspective, trying to describe all of that as anything other than just absolutely fucking unconscionable is impossible.
And I agree wholeheartedly. I just don't understand how they don't understand that the protest vote lends a rather high level of probability that Joe Biden loses and that Donald Trump gets another term. And then not only is that situation in the Middle East going to get exponentially worse because he's not going to give a rat's ass about Gaza. He's going to let Netanyahu do whatever the fuck he wants to do. But then it's going to get exponentially worse here. I mean, we're looking at the next president could appoint 2 to 3 more Supreme Court justices.
Yeah. Because Alito's going to go, Thomas is going to go, Sotomayor's having some health issues. But, you know, Gaza and what Netanyahu and the Israeli military are doing in Gaza. I mean, fortunately, the election is 6 months away.
Yes.
Israel can't do what they've been doing for another 6 months. The international community simply won't have it. I mean, they just won't. They just won't. I mean, too many. They went way too hard, way too far. You know, it's just not sustainable. So fortunately, our election is 6 months away and not 1 month away.
Right. A lot can change. Have you seen Jared Kushner's quote about the lakefront property in Gaza being worth a lot of money?
I saw that interview where he was like, it's unfortunate. And I think they're at a point where they need to move these people out and so they can clean it up. And wow, what amazing waterfront property opportunities are there. I mean, just what kind of sick, depraved piece of shit do you have to be to have that perspective on things, man?
I can't fit that into my fucking head. And he said it so effortlessly, like there was not an ounce of shame to it.
Well, because he thinks everyone views it that way.
Yeah, it's
He
nuts.
he didn't think he was saying anything edgy or outrageous. He thinks everyone feels that way.
I, I was sitting here watching that in stone cold silence, stunned that.
Yeah.
But you know what? The number of things that I have watched, you've watched, we've all watched, that we were stunned wasn't the end of Donald Trump's political career is astonishing. I mean, at the end of the day, one this that should have been the end of his political career. How the fuck did that not end it? I mean, you had the dude on the Democratic side who was fast tracking his way to the Democratic nominee at a rally, get excited and go yeah into a microphone. Fucking career over.
Howard Dean.
Yes,
I remember
over.
that.
You got Donald Trump going oh and nothing. They're all like yeah, fucking up 5 points in the polls.
Well, here's the thing, man. You know, I think Donald Trump is incredibly perceptive about this country and the people who live in this country. And he, I think, was keenly aware that there was a large population in this country who have turned out to be his supporters, and who believe the things they believe and feel the way that they feel about things, but who for more or less for the last 50 years had the sense to keep their mouths closed. And then he came along and told those people that they were pretty and they were special. And then he said all the things that they want to say but haven't been able to. And he was just like, fuck it, and said all of the horrific things that he has said over the last 9 years, and has given tens of millions of people in this country permission to be their absolute worst selves out loud on a regular basis.
Absolutely true. Now the question is, can he win with them? Is it enough anymore for him to win?
Well, his demographic skews older. Boomers are dying off. They've been, getting replaced at an outpaced margin each year by 18-year-olds coming online and joining the electorate.
Yep.
But then October 7th happened.
Yeah,
Who knows, man? Who knows? I don't know.
Colin Jost at the Correspondence Dinner laid it out when he gave what Donald Trump is and what Joe Biden is, and he goes, and they're tied. It's mind numbing that they're actually tied. And so
It's
what we're seeing. What do you believe that what we're seeing in the suburbs in the primaries is going to be enough? So Donald Trump loses some support from the right. Joe Biden loses some support from the left. Is what we're seeing from suburbanites outside of the urban areas, the independents, enough to at least make them take a chance one more time with Joe Biden and say, listen, we cannot risk this. I mean, because a lot of what has occurred in like the midterms and other special elections since the overturning of Roe is that people in the suburban areas, men and women, are like, okay, you guys took it a step too far. It's one thing to run on it for 30 fucking years, 40 fucking years, but you actually took it away. They're actually passing these laws in states. Are you fucking insane? And so that backlash, I think, is very underestimated by the GOP. And I'm just wondering if that middle in the suburban is going to be enough to help Joe Biden get over the hump. Because here's the deal. Whether anybody wants to acknowledge this or not, because everybody thinks that they're going to hold on to power forever because they have been holding on to power forever. This is the last go around for the boomers. Once this election happens in 2028, you're not going to see Joe Biden. You're not going to see Donald Trump. You're not going to see these old timers anymore. There are still going to be some people that are in their 50s, maybe 60s, but you're not going to see these guys anymore. And so I'm wondering if that middle in the suburbs is going to be enough.
Well, as always, we're going to be, asking women to save us in the election, and specifically Black women, because in the last presidential election, 52% of white women voted for Donald Trump. And, we seem to do that every single election cycle.
but he seems to be losing some of that support since Roe.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, Democrats have been outperforming in every special election for the last 2 years since the Dobbs opinion came out overturning Roe versus Wade. And in every single state that abortion has been put up for a statewide referendum, it's passed at least 60-40, including red states like Ohio, Kansas,
Yes.
you know, good pro-life Christian states. I mean, it's passed overwhelmingly. And this time around, it's going to be on the ballot in Arizona. It's going to be on the ballot in Florida and Michigan,
Missouri,
and Missouri, and a whole handful of other red states. And you know, which I mean, especially if you just look at what Arizona did, man, the Arizona Supreme Court bringing back that 1864 abortion bill from 40 years before Arizona was even a state. And the Arizona Republican Party thinking that's, star-spangled awesome, except for 3 or 4 who are like, are you guys not paying attention?
even Trump
Are
came
you
out.
just
Even Trump,
not paying attention? Even Donald Trump gets it. That's why he was trying to spin it last week or the week before, when he was like, it's working great. The states are doing, we gave it back to the states. The states are passing what their citizens want. It's working great. The states are doing what they're doing, and everybody's very, very happy. He was trying to convince himself of that more than anybody else. Because it's like, he's an idiot, but he's not stupid. He knows how to understand numbers. I mean, he's been manipulating them in his entire life.
yes.
And he knows that, that Arizona State Supreme Court decision was the worst fucking thing that could happen in that state in this year. And it just revitalized the whole debate across the country, because that law was so incredibly extreme.
Just like you have with Alabama saying that fetuses or that embryos are children.
Right.
He came out against that as well, because
Yeah.
he sees the backlash against Roe. He didn't think they were going to go that far. But once you put it in the hands of some of these red states have shown that they're willing to do whatever the fuck they want to do. Donald Trump's endorsement or not be damned.
Well, it's like, in Congress, in the House of Representatives, the Senate is a bit better. I mean, yeah, there's Tommy Tuberville and a couple people like him, but the House with the Freedom Caucus, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan, those people are the norm in red state legislatures.
Yes.
Super, super extreme and insane. Those are the majority of the people in red state legislatures that are so far off the rails. They have absolutely no idea what's going on anywhere in the rest of the country, because they just watch OAN. They don't even watch Fox News anymore. It's too liberal for them. And, unfortunately, it's like, I think there are like 26 states that are like that, ballpark, give or take. And,
and Trump just hands them the power to do what the fuck they want when it comes to women's bodies. And and then people I can't believe that one single fucking person is shocked by the outcome that we've seen.
Yeah. Well, and Steve Bannon and Steve Miller and people like that, Stephen Miller, are handpicking those people to populate the next executive branch under Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. And they're trying to do they're trying to pick the people who are going to be the electors. Oddly enough, while the fake electors from the last one are all being indicted. So we've got electors from 3 states indicted so far. They tried this scheme in 6 states total. So you got to imagine there are going to be more states. And when I keep talking to people about those electors, I keep telling them these people are not the Rudy Giuliani's and the Mark Meadows of the world. These are regular fucking folks who now have decisions to make, like, am I going to go to prison for Donald Trump? And you're starting to see them flip.
And it's like, I mean, these are people that work 9 to 5, they have a 9 to 5 and they do some political stuff outside of that. But, married, couple kids in college, and then you get indicted on 13 felonies, and you got to go home and talk to your wife about taking all of the equity out of the house to hire a criminal defense attorney. I know we were going to use that money for the kids' college, but now I got to do this. And it's like your wife is sitting there looking at you like, you fucking idiot.
Yep. Or in some cases, they're sitting there with them, lock, stock, and barrel because they went along for the ride. And here's what I want to know. Speaking of wives and spouses and whatnot going along for the ride, why is it that the person who Fani Willis was sleeping with is a conflict of interest, but the fact that Clarence Thomas is on the Supreme Court and Ginny Thomas was involved in this scheme isn't a conflict of interest?
Fani Willis sleeping with that prosecutor was not a conflict of interest. It was bad optics.
In the minds of the red hats, it was.
That's because they're stupid and gullible.
Exactly. But then they turn around and they see Clarence Thomas and they see Ginny Thomas, and they're like, oh, that's perfectly normal. It's okay that she was involved in trying to overthrow the last election, and now he's going to hear cases about overthrowing the last election. Which, by the way, how do you think they're going to rule on this immunity thing?
Well, I'll come back to that in 1 second. It has a name. I can't remember the name of it, but there's a principle of people who are in favor of authoritarian governments where they want to be protected by the law but not bound by the law, and they think everyone else should be bound by the law and not protected by the law. And your two examples right there are perfect. Fani Willis should be bound by the law, and that's a conflict of interest, and she should be removed. But Clarence and Ginny Thomas, because they're on their side, who gives a shit?
Right.
They shouldn't be bound by any of those conflict of interest regulations or ideas at all. How do I think the Supreme Court is going to rule in the immunity case? I do not think, with the possible exception of Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas, I do not believe any of the other justices will come even remotely close to saying that Donald Trump should have immunity for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. I just don't think they're going to get there. And I think that the majority will be very forceful about that. And I think that John Roberts will be in that majority because he knows the reputation of the Supreme Court right now is in the toilet. He is an institutionalist. He cares deeply about the institution and its reputation and his legacy. And his legacy right now is dog shit. He's not going to compound that. He's going to try to come down on the right side of this thing. However, I think the crux of the arguments comes down to this issue of personal acts versus official acts. And the thing that I love the most about that is, I think it's very likely that the court is going to remand the case down to the trial court judge, Judge Tanya Chutkan, for her to make a determination of, okay, all of these acts that are listed in the indictment, in Trump's January 6th indictment from Jack Smith, we're going to give you this little test or whatever, and you need to make a determination as to which of these acts are official acts and which of these are personal acts for personal benefit.
Okay.
And the beautiful thing about that is because trial judges have absolute control over their calendars and how they run their courtrooms. Judge Chutkan, that decision is going to come down the last week of June. She could say to everybody, okay, mid-July or the beginning of August, I want everybody to be ready to put on your entire case. We're going to hold a hearing on this issue. And so in order for me to make that determination that the Supreme Court has ordered me to make, I need to hear everybody's evidence from all of your witnesses. And it will essentially, if she decides to do this, it'll be the equivalent of having a trial without a jury.
Okay, and let's assume that happens, and there are going to be some acts that are going to be considered personal acts and some acts that are going to be considered.
But all of the evidence will come out before the election in incredible detail.
True, understood. But that hearing, her judgment, could that then be appealed and go back to the Supreme Court?
Sure.
So then that
But by
drags
then, but let's assume that
punishment.
happens. Let's assume that she does this and has a hearing and makes each side put on all of their evidence. She will write a 100-page opinion in incredible detail about all of the horrific things that Donald Trump did and all of the evidence that was presented in support of those things, and will make determinations about personal versus official conduct, and that record will be out there in the electorate before election day. And sure, Donald Trump can appeal it, but her opinion will be out there, and a month's worth of reporting will be out there.
And you think that that could have a very negative effect on his chances, and a positive effect for Joe Biden?
Absolutely.
Because that's really what we're waiting for, the dirty little details, right? We're waiting
Yeah.
for the dirty little details that Jack Smith has. We're waiting on the dirty little details on the Jan 6 case, on the documents case, all the moving and hidden tunnels and all of that, and all of the complexities of all the various things, because the overlying viewpoint of what he was alleged of doing, nobody's in the dark about that anymore. But you have some people that go, it never happened, and you have some people that go, yeah, it absolutely did happen. So my question to you is, given the absolute devotion to the dumbfuckery that is Trumpism that these people exhibit, how do you think that helps him positively? Because do you think that any of them are going to go, oh shit, they actually have evidence? They're going to dismiss it all. I mean, they're going to do what they always do and go, it's fake news, they made it up, it never happened, oh, that's not illegal, whatever the case may be.
They will do that publicly. I think how many of his supporters are expressing themselves is they're not donating to his campaign or his PACs anymore. His small dollar donations are down dramatically, like 30-40% over where they were for the 2020 election cycle. Because he's bled these people dry, first of all.
Mhm.
Second, I think that's how a lot of them are able to express their dissatisfaction with him in this regard on a lot of these issues, while not having to say that publicly, without having to say that out loud in their social circles.
Okay.
First of all. Second of all, when you were saying dirty little details about these cases, the details aren't little. Bear in mind that most prosecutors, when they issue an indictment, like a written speaking indictment, like what we've had in DC or in Mar-a-Lago, prosecutors tend to put about 30 or 40% of the information that they actually have in those indictments. And when you look at the last week in the Manhattan case, like, we knew that there was some kind of catch and kill scheme going on. Everybody had this kind of vague idea, but what we didn't know, I mean, that guy, David Pecker, the former head of the National Enquirer, former CEO of AMI, its parent company, he went into an incredible amount of detail about the dirty little details. The meetings that he and Trump and Michael Cohen had, and the phone conferences where people like Sarah Huckabee Sanders was on the phone from the White House, and Hope Hicks was on the conference call from the White House when they're talking about extending Karen McDougal's contract and paying her off with more money from the White House. We didn't know that shit before. And just the extent and the depth and the breadth of this conspiracy, and the amount of, I mean, I saw one expert say that, those National Enquirer covers during the campaign, that was worth somewhere between $3 to $5 million a month in campaign contributions to Trump's campaign. Well, they started doing this in August of 2015. That could be upwards of $60 million of improper contributions to Trump's campaign in the 2016 election. We had no fucking idea about any of that stuff. So, because none of that stuff was included in the indictment. The indictment for this Manhattan case was 16 pages long. That's it. Never mentioned David Pecker's name. Nothing.
But once again, it's got to sway independents, because the people in the Trump camp, they're not going to give a shit about any of this.
No, they won't. They
They
won't.
will. They will
They
just
won't.
dismiss.
But but I
do anything.
think a big chunk of Trump's supporters, they've got to be getting tired, dude. They've got to be getting tired.
One would imagine. Well, if they're not getting tired, they're certainly getting fucking broke.
Yeah, they're broke. And it's been several years since, significant portions of their family and relatives have spoken to them. It's also got to be getting lonely at some point. It's like, how many Thanksgivings do you want to spend by yourself? Because your adult kids don't talk to you anymore and won't let you see your grandkids.
Oh yeah, you've read stories about people actually getting a divorce over this. He
Yeah.
voted Trump and took out money, and she said that's enough. We're not doing this shit anymore. No,
Yeah.
it's hopefully he loses just enough support. Listen, I don't give a fuck if he only won 3 states and Joe Biden swept the rest. He would still say it was fucking rigged until the day
Yeah.
he took his last fucking breath. So
Yep.
I don't care. I don't like the margin of victory. Yeah, sure. I'd love a huge margin of victory. I'd love to really make it decisive. I hope he loses just enough support that we can get Joe Biden back in for 4 more years, wrap this whole fucking thing up, be done with the both of them, and listen, the insanity that Trump has brought to the surface. Ronald Reagan figured out a way to use the Christian right as a voting base, and Donald Trump figured out a way to use the most insane faction of them as his voting base. And I believe that there's a way to make them as silent as they once were. Like you said, they didn't come out of the woodwork until he gave them license to be insane. We had a certain level of insanity, we had a certain level of bigotry, we had a certain level of crazy that existed in the Republican politics, and then along comes Trump, and everybody just waddles out of their refrigerator box dwellings and shanties to make sure that they cast a vote for the next Messiah. And it truly is a drink the Kool-Aid kind of moment. But my fear still exists that we're going to have these protest votes, that we're going to have these younger kids in this movement, and I'm really hopeful that the suburban crowd is enough to kind of to make it just get over the top. And then I say, back the fuck away and let the Gen Zers run the fucking country for a while.
Yeah.
Because the boomers have had the levers of power for long enough. Our generation is entering retirement, and we're the smaller generation wedged in between the boomers and the millennials. We give it to the millennials and the Gen Zs, and we say, all right, listen, we're sorry that our people fucked it up, but at least we kept Trump out of there for that last term. It's yours now. You fucking run it. And then we start to see the more progressive movement blossom in this country, which I think is actually going to create sort of an underground far-right Christian nationalist movement that's going to fight back in the churches and in the Klan meetings across the country for the next several years, because they're going to view themselves as being under attack.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that entirely. I mean, two things that I'm paying attention to. Individual polling data generally can suck, but trends over time, I think, are important to pay attention to. The trend over time is that if Donald Trump gets convicted of a bunch of felonies, even in this case, his support with independents and swing voters is going to crater. It's going to just fall off a cliff. Second, with him taking over the RNC and taking all of their money because he needs it for legal fees, the RNC has cut off, and I was surprised to learn they even had this program. They've shut down their minority outreach program. Yeah.
They fired that guy. Huh?
The RNC had a minority outreach program. They also had an early voting program that encouraged Republicans to vote early with mail-in ballots. That program's gone. And because he's taken all of their money, that, half of the job of the RNC is to fund down ballot candidates, members of the House, members of the Senate, governors, state legislatures. None of those candidates are getting any money from the RNC this election cycle. They are all on their own. And Democrats are raising money like gangbusters. And Donald Trump is stealing every fundraising dollar that's coming into the RNC. And his small dollar donors have dried up to almost nothing. And he's still spending about $100,000 a day on legal fees. And that's going to continue through election day.
He's going to bleed him
And
dry.
the financial fundraising advantage for Democrats this cycle is astronomical. It is astronomical. And I hope I hope they can figure out how to translate that into actual votes. But I just want to see, because it's not going to be long. It's going to be maybe 4 or 5 weeks from now, when this trial wraps up and Donald Trump gets convicted of a bunch of felonies. I can't wait for that day. Not just because I want to see him get convicted of a bunch of felonies, but then over the next 3-4 weeks, I want to see the impact that it has on the polling numbers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay, before we wrap this up, I think that the important question, and forgive me for a second here, the important question is, what the fuck is your problem with the Grateful Dead?
I mean, dude, so, all right. So I remember I was in I was in 3rd grade. I was 8 when I got my first Kiss album. And, it's like I'd grown up, I have an uncle who's 10 years older than me. So it's like I was listening to The Who and Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and stuff like that. I gravitated towards Zeppelin and Sabbath, and then Kiss, and then the Police. And then I found Rush, and my brother and I, it's like Rush were our guys forever. And then, and then 1985, I heard Metallica's first album. Then it was the Big Four and thrash. And, so it's like, I've always tended to like, music that you can be violent to some degree.
And that is
and I think we can all agree that is not the Grateful Dead.
No, it is not. No,
I went and saw the Grateful Dead once. It was like 1985 or 86 or something. We all went up to the Akron Rubber Bowl to see Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Bob Dylan and the Grateful Dead.
All right.
And I loved Tom Petty. Bob Dylan, I didn't get. And I was like, and I tried to like, okay, I'm at a Grateful Dead show. And, I got to see him with Jerry Garcia. And I'm like, I'm here. This is history. This band is the real deal. They have this fan base, and I'm going to try to appreciate this. And I was just like, I don't understand this even a little bit.
It is way too mellow. It is way too mellow. But the one thing about, you and I do chew on some of the same dirt when it comes to music. I too love the Metallicas and the Anthraxes and Deaths, and you get into a lot more metal than I do. I get into a little bit of metal. But when I came of age, so I turned 10 in 82. So when I was coming of age, we had obviously the onset of MTV and hair metal. And so I came of age when Guns N' Roses ruled the airwaves, when Poison ruled the airwaves. And at one time you were talking in a video or a live, and it kind of warmed the heart a little bit to hear you say, but my dirty little secret is that I still get into Rat every now and again. And I'm like, fucking A, Rat rocks, man. Rat is like one of those 80s hair bands that I think is severely updated, and they shred.
That dude, they had Warren DeMartini, man.
Yeah.
Warren DeMartini is one of the most vastly underrated guitarists out there, man. And dude's a beast.
They get after it. So I was kind of, you made me happy that you got a little sliver of 80s hair metal in you.
Yep. It's in there.
I mean, that was like all of it. Like I saw Guns N' Roses with Skid Row opening them up for him in Wisconsin. Poison with Brittany Fox and Terre Haute. Brittany Fox.
Brittany Fox.
Yeah.
Girls' School.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, that was
dude,
like
the first time that I saw Guns N' Roses, I didn't know who they were. It was very shortly after their album came out, before any of their songs were on the radio, and they were opening for The Cult.
Oh, nice band, good band.
And they played at a place in Columbus that holds, I don't know, like 4,000 or 5,000 people. And I'm like, Guns N' Roses. I'm like, I don't know who that is. That's kind of a cool name. And we got there and we saw those guys, and I was like, fuck. I was like, these guys are going to take over the world, man.
And they did. I mean,
I was like, these guys are going to be
of all time.
massive.
Yeah, they came on, like gangbusters, and then unfortunately Axl just fell apart. The Cult is actually who opened up for Metallica when I saw him in Evansville in '88 on the Damage Justice tour. And the Cult, it was when the Cult, it was really hitting their stride with
Yeah.
Firewoman. It was all Firewoman was on MTV,
Yeah.
and it was all the airwaves. But they were booed off the stage the entirety of that Metallica tour because the Metallica fans were like, fuck you, we didn't come to see you. We came to see Metallica, get the fuck off the stage. We don't give a shit that you have a hit. And they just didn't really appreciate what the Cult actually was. Had they taken some time into them, the Cult actually has one hell of a lineup. Back in the day, the Cult reminded me of a modern day version of the Doors. Like he was a modern day version of Jim Morrison, in my opinion, back in the 80s.
Yeah.
So that was probably one of my favorite shows. But I get the whole Grateful Dead thing. Jerry Garcia once himself famously said we're like black licorice. Not everybody loves black licorice. The people who do like licorice really like black licorice.
Yeah.
Don't like it, really don't fucking like it.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but
it's just one of those things where it's like, I mean, there are bands that I hate, and Grateful Dead's not one of them. They're just not. It's just not my deal. Oh boy,
because I'll give you one of mine. Nirvana. I fucking hate Nirvana.
I absolutely hated many of the hair metal bands. Just because I just
Poison.
Fucking hate Poison. But here's the thing, man. It's like, late 80s. It's like I got it. I understood it. It's like it was taking the idea of being in a band to meet women to an extreme.
Yes.
Because it's like I was going to Rush concerts throughout the 80s. There were no girls at Rush concerts.
No.
There just weren't.
No.
And then I think it must have been like the fall of 86. I was just starting college. Buddy of mine dragged me to see Bon Jovi on their Slippery When Wet tour. And it was like he and I were the only guys there.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, not that Bon Jovi is Poison, but
No, but that's what the scene. That's what the scene. It was all about having fun, getting laid, hating girls, and that's why I really hate Nirvana. Is because when grunge came in, grunge destroyed hair metal, and we went from, like, in our teens, it was all about having a good time, to in comes this new group of kids as we get out of high school, and they're all pissed off at the world, and they're all sulking and salty, and it's like, the fuck, this is the best time of your life. Have some fun. Oh, the fucking man and the fucking this and the fucking. It's like, God.
Yeah, everybody was depressed and dressed like shit.
Yeah, and Nirvana was leading the fucking charts. So I was like, fuck you, Kurt Cobain. You fucking stand for. And ironically enough, out of that shitstorm that I despise came somebody that I think is one of the most instrumental members of the music community when it comes to keeping the history of music alive, and that's Dave Grohl.
Yeah.
He has a true passion for making sure that the next generation understands and knows it, and whatnot and what have you. Hawk.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, man. This has been hello, Lola.
They've been very well behaved for most of this. So,
hey,
thanks for the invite, dude. I appreciate it immensely.
I'm going to get out to San Francisco sooner or later. I promise.
I'll be here, brother. And
if you ever get to Chicago, if you're coming in for the DNC this year, hit me up. We'll have a beat.
Stranger things have happened. If that happens, I'll let you know.
All right, man. You have a good one. Go spend time with the puppers.
All right. Thanks, brother. Have a great night. See ya.